Hello and welcome to the Bell Mama Hypnobirthing and Positive Birth podcast. My name is Ellie Waddington. I'm a hypnobirthing teacher, antenatal instructor and positive birth coach, and I'm here to help you go into the birth of your baby with a positive mindset. Every week I share my top tips, advice and amazing birth stories to help you go from fearful and anxious about your birth to positive and confident. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and let's get into this episode. Hey gorgeous mama, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host Ellie Waddington and I'm here to help you have an amazing birth experience. If you are new here, welcome. I am so happy that you found this space. I'm so happy that you're taking this massive first step on your positive birth journey, and you should be proud of yourself. You should celebrate those small wins. Make sure you give yourself a hug, make sure you give yourself a pat on the back and celebrate those small wins. They are so important. If you're not new here, welcome back. I'm so happy that you're back. Make sure you celebrate your small wins as well. Now, I was MIA last week because I was getting prepared to launch my new ebook, my new guide, which is all about learning how to prepare for your postpartum, basically. It's called Nurturing the New Mother, Preparing for Postpartum, and it's all about everything that you can start doing now while you're pregnant to start preparing for a nice, calm, easy postpartum period. And there are so many things that you just don't think about, that you don't realize are going to crop up. So many surprises, so many things that you don't realize that you have to prepare for. And this is basically the guide that I really wish that I had during my first postpartum period. During those first weeks and those first months after giving birth, this is the guide that I really wish that I had, before I'd had my first baby, so that I could have put in all this preparation as well. So this is basically a culmination of everything that I learned on both of my postpartum journeys and from all of the women that I have helped support over the last 2 years on their postpartum journeys as well. So this guide, it has practical tips on things that you can start doing now. It talks about everything that you can expect from your body after your baby comes, and it's also got stories from women that I've supported and some friends of mine as well, so that you can get some real accounts of what postpartum is actually like. And you can buy that guide right now. It's available. I'm going to put the link in the show notes down below. You can go over and get it. It is 50 pages. It's an amazing guide. I put so much effort into it. And it also includes recipes and printable affirmation cards. And it also talks about how you can incorporate your hypnobirthing techniques, things that you learned during your pregnancy and used during your birth. You can also use them as you are healing during your postpartum weeks and months and even years. You can use these hypnobirthing techniques forever. So head on over, make sure you get your guide so that as well as a positive birth, you can also have that positive postpartum. And this kind of leads me into the topic that I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to be talking about the 3 biggest mistakes that I made with my first postpartum journey. Okay, and before we get into that, I just really want to kind of explain a little bit about postpartum and why we need to be preparing for it. You see, I consider postpartum to be part of the birth process. I think so many of us think of birth as being literally just one day, like birth is literally just you go into labor, you have your baby and then it's done, birth is over. But I absolutely do not believe that. I'm a firm believer that birth is the entire pregnancy and leading up to the birth and postpartum as well. So I believe that birth actually takes about 2 years basically, and that seems a bit crazy when people hear that, but it's true. Everything that happens during pregnancy is your body preparing to birth and nurture your baby, and that's all part of the same process. It's not like you just suddenly go into labor on, when your baby is about to be born. You don't just suddenly go into labor. Your body basically progresses up to that, and then after you've had your baby, everything that happens is then helping your body to heal from that, to go back to the way it was. Well, actually no, Sorry, that's a lie. It doesn't ever go completely back to the way it was, but it goes back to its non-pregnant state, and also for nurturing your baby as well. So it's a massive long process, and we as a Western modern society, we are so hyper focused on bouncing back, on getting back to being productive, getting back to work, getting up and about and doing things. We don't value the work that a mother does in raising a baby. We do not see. So when a mother is just resting and she's bonding with her baby and she's helping that baby to grow up and to thrive, we don't consider that to be essential work. We don't consider that to be productive. And that is so, so, so sad, because surely raising the next generation, raising good, well-rounded people for the next generation, surely that is absolutely essential. But we don't see it that way. We don't value that as work, basically. So new mothers, they tend to be pushed, they tend to be championed and praised for getting back to normal, for getting up and about and getting back to doing household chores and getting back to work as soon as possible. And I really, really want to change that narrative. I really, really want us to start really valuing the work that mothers do, particularly those first couple of years of a child's life, those formative years. We need to be okay with that being our focus. We need to be okay with that being our priority for a couple of years. And this is what I'm really, really trying to change. So this episode, I'm going to be talking about the 3 biggest mistakes that I made with my first postpartum journey. Now, the number 1 biggest mistake that I made was that I didn't plan for it. I didn't even think about my postpartum. Okay, I mean, you've heard my story before. Yeah, you know that I did very little planning for my birth. Anyway, I was just basically winging it. I just thought, I'm going to go with the flow, going to see what happens. I'll have the baby, maybe spend a couple of days healing, and that'll be it. I'll be back to normal. My God, I was so unprepared for what was happening with my body and my baby that first time round. I look back and I cringe. I look back and I think, what was I doing? What was I doing? Seriously. The biggest mistake for that postpartum journey, I didn't plan for it. I didn't think that there was going to be so much that I would have to navigate in my postpartum. The first thing that shocked me, the first thing that I didn't realise would happen was the amount of bleeding. It's what you call lochia, is all the blood that comes out after you've had your baby, right? And it was a few hours after I'd had my baby, and I was still laid in the hospital bed, and I remember feeling this big wet kind of gush in between my legs, and I had a look and there was so much blood, right? And I got my husband to buzz for the midwife, and the midwife came in and I said, I'm hemorrhaging, I'm postpartum hemorrhaging, there's so much blood. And she very casually just came over, she wasn't worried at all, she had a look and she was like, nope, that's a normal amount of blood, that's what you'd expect. And I was like, that's normal? That's a normal amount of blood? And she was like, yeah, that's quite a normal amount of blood. And I said, right, so what does a postpartum hemorrhage look like? If this is a normal amount, what does it look like? And she said, oh, you'll know if you're hemorrhaging. And I was like, right, okay. With all due respect, I don't think I will, because I thought this was a hemorrhage. But anyway, I take your point. She said basically if there are loads of massive clots coming out, or if you're soaking through the sheet, soaking through the mattress, that's what we consider to be a hemorrhage. And I was like, righto, okay, good to know. Now, of course, I'd known that there was going to be some bleeding, because of course all the lists that you look at to, what to pack in your hospital bag, they all say to take maternity pads. So of course I knew there was going to be some bleeding, but my God, I was not prepared for the amount of blood that comes out after you've had your baby, and also for how long it lasts as well. That stuff lasts for weeks. It starts off quite heavy and starts to get a little bit weaker as the weeks go on, but you're bleeding for a good sort of 4 or 5 weeks most of the time. It's nuts. I had no idea about that. And then there were so many things that just kept popping up as I, as my baby got to a week old and 2 weeks old and several months old. There were just so many changes in my body that I was not anticipating, things that I'd had no idea about because I hadn't prepared. I hadn't done any planning. I hadn't done any research. And these were just shocking things that just kept popping up, basically. So that was my first big mistake, was that I did not plan for it. And so my advice to you right now is to do some research, okay? Do some research about what happens to your body postpartum and start to plan for things that you can put in place to make those transitions easier for you. Now, the second mistake that I made was trying to do too much too soon. I've already talked about how society really champions bouncing back and getting back to normal and being productive and getting out and about, and that's how I felt. I can remember I was sat, I think I was breastfeeding my son. I can't remember what exactly I was doing, but I was so tired and I was breastfeeding him on the sofa, and my mother-in-law made me some scrambled eggs, and she brought the scrambled eggs over and put them basically next to me on the arm of the sofa, and I felt so guilty that I was basically being waited on. I thought in my head, I'm doing nothing. People around me are doing all the housework, they're doing the cooking, they're walking the dog, and I'm doing nothing. That was how little I thought of mothering and how guilty I felt, basically. I felt that what I was doing, breastfeeding my child, trying to, get some sleep, trying to look after my baby, I thought that was basically doing nothing. That's how I viewed it, because that's how society conditions us to think of it, And that was a massive, massive mistake, because it meant that I tried to get up and do things too soon. I tried to push myself too soon, before I was ready, before my body was ready, before my baby was ready. And for my first birth, I had stitches. I had a episiotomy, and I had stitches, and I was in quite a lot of pain. And I should have been just in bed. I literally should have been in bed for days, even up to a week. But I pushed myself to get up, to get around, to go for walks, and I shouldn't have. I really, really regret that I did that, but there we go. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I know that now, and I did better for my second postpartum journey. And the third mistake that I made was not learning about safe bed sharing. Okay, I'd heard this same message that so many women hear from so many different places, that bed sharing is dangerous, that you'll smother your baby, that baby needs to be on their back in a cot by themselves in their own sleep space, and that's the safest place for them to be. And this meant that basically every time my newborn baby woke up through the night, which was 100 times, you'll get to know this. You need to look up sort of normal newborn behaviour. Newborn babies wake up constantly through the night. It meant that I was getting out of bed, up and up and up and down and up and down, and out of bed and into bed and out of bed and into bed. And I was so tired. Oh my God. I was so tired. For months, I was so chronically sleep deprived because I kept getting out of bed and back into bed to feed him back to sleep every single time. And yeah, this just wasn't safe. There were so many times that I would wake up and I realised that I'd fallen asleep, and I thank my lucky stars that nothing happened to my baby. Luckily, he didn't ever fall off my lap. He never fell down the side of the sofa or fell off the bed or anything like that. But he very easily could have done. And those are the most common statistics for, unsafe bed sharing or unsafe co-sleeping. It's the unsafe situations that cause infant deaths for those situations. And if more women were educated in preparing their bed for safe bed sharing, getting the covers out the way, making sure that there's, something safe on the edge of the bed, making sure that you're not wearing loose clothing and things like that, so many women wouldn't be so sleep deprived, and they wouldn't accidentally drop their baby under the duvet or off a side of the bed because they're so exhausted. Because I can tell you now that however much you say to yourself, I will stay awake, if you are that chronically sleep deprived during a night feed, you will at some point drop off to sleep without meaning to. And so if you can learn now how to safely prepare your bed for bed sharing, it means that if you do accidentally fall asleep, then your baby is not going to be put in an unsafe situation. But if you are desperately trying to stay awake and you do nod off and you haven't done that, then an accident could happen. And yeah, it's such a scary feeling waking up knowing that you fell asleep and that your baby could have been in an unsafe situation. And it's, even if you don't ever plan to bed share, even if you plan never to co-sleep with your baby, which is a completely personal choice, it's still better to learn how to do it safely, so that even if you have one night where you're so sleep deprived, you decide to bring your baby to bed because that's where they sleep the most soundly, it's better to have that knowledge than to not have that knowledge. And remember that your baby wants to sleep near you. We are primates. We are carry mammals. We are designed to be close to our baby for a very long time. For up to 2 years, we are designed to be very, very close to our baby. And our babies, they know that. That's their instinct. That's their biological instinct. If you look at orangutans and gorillas and chimpanzees, they're just constantly on their mothers, and that's what our babies want to do as well. That's why they love slings and carriers and being worn, baby wearing. Look that up as well. But yeah, that's where they sleep most soundly. If you just have one night where you are so exhausted you decide to bring them into bed with you, it's better to know how to do that safely. And so if you want to know a little bit more about safe bed sharing and how to do it safely and when it's not safe to bed share, a great source of information is actually the Lullaby Trust. So what I'll do is I'll link their website in the show notes down below so you can have a little look at what they have to say. So those are the 3 biggest mistakes that I made with my first postpartum journey. I didn't plan for it. I tried to do too much too soon, and I didn't know anything about safe bed sharing, and I drove myself to exhaustion basically. And with my second postpartum journey, I went literally the complete opposite. I went hardcore, prioritizing myself and my rest and my healing, and it made for such a different journey. I literally put in place a massive plan. Like I did basically a birth plan, but it was a postpartum. I did a postpartum plan, and I talked about how many days I wanted to stay in bed for. I talked about when I would be accepting visitors. I talked about all the different foods I wanted to eat. I planned for all of this, and I made sure that everyone around me knew exactly what the plan was, and they were all so supportive, and they took such good care of me. And it meant that I just spent literally days lying in bed with my newborn baby, just learning, just her learning how to breastfeed, bonding with her and healing and sleeping whenever I wanted. And it was just the most magical, relaxing time. It was so different, and I just really prioritized that healing time, and it made for such a different journey. And I talk about this a lot in my postpartum guide, which you can go and buy right now, and it will help you so much with putting in place those essential things that you need for a positive, calm postpartum journey. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode, that you've learned a few things, you got a few things that you're going to start implementing for your postpartum. And yeah, if there's anything that you want to chat about, if you have any questions, do feel free to email me or connect with me on Instagram. And I'll be back next week with an expert interview. It's a good one. Make sure you come back for that episode. Until next week, bye!